Hi everybody, it's Adam, the geneticist and genomic data scientist here at Verdure Healthcare, and welcome to this episode on chromosome 7 and the skull problem. So today we will be talking about 9 diseases that are related to chromosome 7. So let's get going. Okay, so as you might by now be familiar with this chart here. So in human, we do have 23 chromosomes. So previous episodes, we've talked about all the other 6. So today, we'll be focusing on chromosome 7. So chromosome 7 is the 7th largest chromosome in our human body, and it takes up about 5% of our total genes. So just to remind you a little bit between the relationship of a chromosome and the DNA, they are actually the same thing, except DNA and genes, they are, the same words, they mean the same thing. When they pack together, it will become a chromosome. So basically, chromosome is a pack of genes. Just, you can imagine a ball of string and the piece of string. Okay, anyway, as you might recall, there are 4 kinds of DNA ingredients, G, C, A, and T. Alright, so every living form on this earth, including plants, humans, and insects, they are all made from these ingredients. So it is just the combination and the total amount of GCATs that are different that makes us different organisms. Right, so in chromosome 7, there are over 159 million DNA pieces. So DNA pieces meaning the GCAT components within it. So I've mapped it out here for you, the locations of different gene and genetic codes, and on the first disease itself, we will have a look at the codings. Anyway, usually when there are genetic diseases that are either very rare or there's just no name for it, then we will be using a code. For example, this is 7p21.3, okay? So sometimes we need to use these codes to locate certain locations on the gene. Right, so as promised at the beginning, I'll be talking about 9 diseases. So these are some of the ones that are related to chromosome 7. There are more, but these are the most common ones. Okay, so just to give you a refresher before we start, remember we have 2 kinds of genetic disorders. First of all, it would be the single gene disorders where it involves just bits and pieces of the DNA ingredients. For example, if there's a C missing, if there's a G being replaced, or the T being duplicated, something like that. So these are on the very small scale, but they will do a huge damage if they appear in our gene. So for chromosomal abnormality, it involves a large chunk of DNA pieces, just to put it in a simple way, because if these happens, then the rate of miscarriage, or so-called risk of miscarriage, is actually quite high. Okay, right, so this is it, 7q11.23 duplication syndrome. Well, I do apologize in advance, I've been giving you a hard one to start off with, but anyway, this disease is not too difficult to understand. So let me give you a little test over here. What is 7q and what does 11.23 mean, right? Okay, have a think about those while I explain what is this disease about. Okay, so when a child has 7q11.23, duplication syndrome, it means that this particular genetic code, okay, has been duplicated. Alright, it can be 1 more time or 2 more times depending on how severe it is, and of course it will also affect the severity of the syndromes. So when the children get this kind of syndrome, what they will face is delayed motor or speech and even social skill during early childhood. So these are 3 components: the motor skill, speech skill, and social skill. Okay? But nevertheless, besides that, they will be having neurological abnormalities as well, okay, such as hypotonia, all right, so adventitious movements, abnormal gait, and even station, okay. So sometimes they might get speech sound disorders, including motor speech. Okay, so over here, motor skill and the speech skills are different, but over here, motor speech skills, okay, disorders, all right, and then difficulty pronouncing words as well. And also, they might be having behavioral problems such as anxiety and even selective autism, and the syndromes will actually replicate something like autism and along that spectrum as well, and intellectual disability in some of the children. And children with this 7q11.23 syndrome, they will have a very distinctive facial feature, and the moment you have a look at this child, you will know that there is something special about this child. And also, okay, one very important thing is that they might be having cardiovascular diseases as well, such as the dilation. Dilation means the expansion of the ascending aorta. So in our hearts, we have got a very big blood vessel called the aorta. If this part gets dilated, what's going to happen is that this child might feel clamness, okay? They might be, feeling very sleepy, and the syndromes, the symptoms might be very similar to anemia. All right, let's move on to the second disease, FOXP2. So FOXP2, okay, it's not a very serious disease whereby, okay, it affects the development of the speech and the language development in early childhood, or starting from early childhood. So what's going to happen is that these children, they will have a lot of difficulties producing sequences of words, okay? Just like I'm speaking to you right now in a sequence of words. Syllables, they might not be able to produce syllable sounds and even words, okay? Right, let me try to get this pronunciation right the first time. Do excuse me if I don't. So on the third disease we're going to talk about is the cyphalopolysynthetic syndrome. Okay, there we go, got it. Right, and anyway, so let's hope I'm not going to read it one more time, this disease's name. Anyway, so it will affect the limb, okay, the head and the facial development of this particular child. So as you can see over here, I'm not sure if you can see it clearly, but if you type in this name into Google, you'll see quite a lot of pictures where the child will be having an extra digit, okay? For example, like the fingers, normally we have 5, but they will be having either an extra one, okay? Either on the fingers, okay, or the toe, in this case called the polydactyly, all right? So over here, polydactyly. Okay. All right. Oh, okay, one more thing is that the skin between the fingers or the toe might be fused together as well, just like this, okay? So the skin has been fused together. Whether or not this is operatable to separate the fingers and the toe, it really depends on the severity, okay? If it's just the skin, most probably it can be separated. Anyway, so this disorder, for children getting this kind of syndrome, they might have spaced eye as well. So for example, if you look at me right now, okay, so you will see the portion between my eyes. But children with this kind of syndrome, they will have separate eyes, okay, a more separated eyes where the middle part of here would be wider, okay. Rarely, but it happens. When children get this kind of syndrome, they might have serious medical problems such as a seizure, okay, delayed development, and even intellectual disability. Okay, let's talk about another very different kind of disease, myeloplastic syndrome. All right, so myeloplastic syndrome is actually a group of disorder. It's not one disorder or it is a group of disorders by the red blood cells, not red blood cells, by the blood cells that are poorly formed and not working properly. So many people mistakenly thought that it is only the red blood cells that are not being, produced properly. But no, for this particular disease, there are many blood cells, again, including, for example, white blood cells, platelets, that are not being produced properly. Why is that? Because there is a very important protein that has been missing within the bone marrow, the spongy part of the bone marrow, where all blood cells are being produced. Okay? But most importantly, this kind of a syndrome, not only that it can cause anemia, there is also a huge chance of it causing blood cancer as well. How to cure this if unfortunately there's one child who got it? Well, one possible solution might be bone marrow transplant, but there is also a risk of a rejection. There is also a risk of immunogenetic diseases as well. Anyway, so let's have a look at this disease, okay? Partial monosomy 7p. So what does it mean by, okay, let's dissect this. Monosomy. Monosomy means that, okay, instead of having a pair of chromosomes, now we only have one, okay? Mono is one. Alright, partial monosomy, meaning to say that, okay, it is not completely missing for the chromosome, but, okay, let's have a look at this picture first, if you don't mind. So, on number 7, okay, on this 7th chromosome here, you can see that there is no other complementing chromosome with it. So this is called monosomy 7, okay, but now it's partial. In that case, of this abnormality, whereby it depends on how much genetic material has been missing. So, and also the deletion region as well. Okay, if you can see over here, normal number 7 chromosome is of this length, but the upper part of it has been missing, okay? So pretty much 1/3 of it has been missing. And over here, about 1/5, all right? And the other 2 is less than that. So of course that would depict different severity and the symptoms that it shows. And the most obvious symptom it can show is developmental delay, intellectual disability. One symptom it is worth noting is the behavioral problem and the distinctive facial feature. Usually these are very related to, general genetic diseases. Okay. So another disease that involves the whole chromosome is the ring chromosome 7. So just now we have missing parts in, one of the chromosome 7. But now the thing is that because the head or the toe of chromosome 7 has been missing, so that is why we usually say that these are the caps of the chromosome. When they have been missing, then this chromosome will be curled up and stuck together in an O-shaped manner. So in this case, it looks like 100, but this is a normal chromosome. But the other 2, not only that it has got an extra chromosome, which is already abnormal, but the other 2 chromosomes has their caps being missing. So they have been fused together in an O shape. Alright, so as you can see, this is 1 and the other one is an O, and this looks like a 108, and then this is, let me test you for a while over here. What is this? This is partial monosomy, okay, because there is one part being missing. So as you can see, these are the comparisons as well. Okay, so this particular disease, the symptoms is highly variable, so there is no fixed symptoms that we can look out for. But anyway, generally, they will have growth failure or failure to thrive, a very small stature, serious intellectual disability, dermatological abnormalities, meaning to say that the skin has got abnormalities such as nevus flammeus, dark pigments, okay, something like that. All right. Okay. And then, so yeah, there we go. So that explains what I want to say just now. When the caps have been missing, they will have a fusion kind of like symptoms. But usually there are other, symptoms that have been reported, such as convulsions. Convulsion is more like a seizure, cleft lip, cleft palates, all right? And then also genital abnormalities as well. Okay, so Russell-Silva syndrome. So I believe this would be the second last disease we're going to talk about. So Russell-Silva syndrome is actually a growth disorder. So this is characterized by the child having a very slow growth, even before birth, okay? So, and then after birth as well. And babies with this condition will usually have a very low birth weight, okay? And then they don't grow as expected. Right. However, one thing that is very worthwhile noting is that the head growth is actually normal, all right? And then so the head itself, because the body is not growing as much, the head might be a little bit large and out of proportion compared to the rest of the body. And then sometimes they have episodes of low blood sugar because of the difficulties from feeding, okay? Yeah, so on average, when this particular child grows into adults, according to statistics, usually male, they will be about 4 feet 11 inches, and females will be around 4 feet 7 inches, something like that. So they are kind of much shorter than normal people. Right? Okay, so this is Jobson Syndrome. Okay, sorry, this I believe will be the second last disease we talked about. Okay, so what happened is that the skull of this baby got fused together earlier than expected. All right, so during the time when this is still an infant, when the baby is still very, very young, the skull is not supposed to fuse together that early. But if it fuses up, much earlier than expected, it's going to distort the facial feature. So as you can see from this drawing, the right eye is lower than the left eye, and then the central line might be off as well. Okay? But usually for this particular disease, there wouldn't be any severe kind of symptoms. Usually the intellectual kind of, what I should say is that there shouldn't be any intellectual disability, okay, usually, right? And so usually these babies will have small and rounded ears as well. Okay, so on the last disease, Williams syndrome, whereby, okay, this will cause severe intellectual disability and learning problems as well. So unique personality and characteristics has been exhibited as well from these babies, and then distinctive facial feature. And also one more problem is that they will usually have heart and blood vessel problems. Okay, so one of the most distinctive kind of symptoms would be the narrowing of major blood vessels, especially in the heart, and that is going to cause quite a lot of problems. It can cause angina, and then it can also lead to sudden death disease, right? And then some of the babies, they will have endocrine abnormalities as well. Okay, so you might be asking me, Adam, okay, after all these talks on the 9 diseases that can be exhibited by chromosome 7, what are the solutions? Okay, I have to be really honest with you. Currently, genetic therapy is more of a fantasy rather than a practical solution. But the possible mechanisms include transplantation, also called the gene therapy, protein replacements, disease-specific compensation. So for example, if this affects the metabolism of the body, we can use food, we can use other eating therapies to control the symptoms. Sometimes we need medical or surgical intervention, such as Williams syndrome we talked about. If the blood vessels are really too narrow, then we need surgical interventions to dilate that. Okay, health monitoring, surveillance, but more importantly, why not prevent these diseases from happening? Okay, the second question that you might be asking, can it be prevented? Yes, of course it can, before you even get pregnant. Because at Verdure Healthcare, we have something called the pre-pregnancy DNA screening, whereby whether you, okay, and also your family members have exhibited any kind of genetic diseases or not, you will be able to check with us whether in your body have you got any hiding genes that can cause a disease in your next generation? Let me elaborate that in a bit more detail. Back in 2005, the Chicago University School of Medicine has done a research something like this. Humans carry 1 to 2 lethal recessive mutations on average, study estimates. And when humans carry on average 1 to 2 mutations, that, if inherited from both parents, can cause severe genetic disorder or death before reaching reproductive age. Now, the scientific reproductive age is at 15 years old, not 18, because 18 for most countries would be the legal age, but scientifically it will be 15. Okay, report scientists from the University of Chicago and Columbia University. So these two are one of the most well-known medical schools in the United States, and they have come together and have done this research, and it is simply saying that healthy humans like me and you, we could have got some kind of horrible genetic mutations that are hiding in us. It's not going to affect us as an individual, okay? Why? Because remember, how many chromosomes do we humans have? We have 2, right? So if, let's say, for example, the 7q11.23 syndrome that we just talked about, okay, that's the first disease we talked about, appeared on one of the chromosomes, but the other chromosome is okay, then what's going to happen is that you are going to be okay. But if coincidentally your partner has the same problem or carrying the same kind of disease, then there will be a high chance of your children getting the disease and be affected by it. Okay? So you might want to listen to this part one more time just to get your concepts stronger. Anyway, so that is why our pre-pregnancy DNA screening has been separated into 2 reports, 2 major reports. The first one would be to screen all of your chromosomes. Okay, so from the first pair all the way to the 23rd pair, where it will be a sex chromosome. Okay, so what are we going to look out for over here? Okay, number 1 will be the deletion. Okay, so this is the normal chromosome. If something gets deleted, then most probably, when we compare it, it's going to look shorter than the other chromosome. Duplication syndrome, meaning to say that when this is the normal chromosome, something from this chromosome here gets duplicated or photocopied one more time. Alright, so once again, if we do a comparison between the normal chromosome and the abnormal chromosome, we will be able to see it immediately. An inversion, meaning to say that there is actually no gain or loss of genetic information. It is just that this point A, let's pretend that this is point A and this is point B, has been flipped around. Okay, and this is not easy to spot. Substitution, meaning to say that, okay, the 4th chromosome and the 20th chromosome, this is an example, okay, something from the 4th chromosome goes to the 20th chromosome, alright? So this is a single direction, whereas translocation is a 2-way swap, okay, whereby something from chromosome 4 has gone to chromosome 20, and chromosome 20 gives something to chromosome 4. Okay, but of course, all the chromosome number I give just now are just examples. It can happen between chromosome 1 and chromosome 17, all right, something like that. But inversion, substitution, and translocation, they will not affect you as an individual. Guess why? Because you are not having more or less genetic information that is going to cause a chaos in your body. Alright? So you have the same amount of genetic information. But imagine this, if you were to give this part, okay, for example, this part, to your children and combine with your partner's normal chromosome, what is going to happen? Okay, there will be duplicated or deleted genetic information. There will be chaos. There will be a genetic chaos in the body, and that's going to cause a major problem. And sometimes, or better off, I should say, there could be miscarriage or stillbirth. All right, but if let's say these babies are born with this particular problem, it's going to do a lot of psychological damage to the parents. Okay. Right, second part of the report would be something called the next generation sequencing, whereby we will screen for 169 Asia's most common and most seen genetic diseases, 169. And even within each of these diseases, for example, alpha thalassemia, there are different variants. So 169 diseases and the relevant variants added together equals 11,000. Okay, 11,000 variants on 169 genetic diseases, most commonly seen in Asia. So I'm not going to go into details about this particular picture. It simply means how do we extract your DNA, how do we take out the components in your DNA for a detailed analysis. All right, so this is a very complicated process. Okay, so this is one of the sample reports. So the disease over here is beta thalassemia, Smith-Lemli-Opitz, and the Wilson's disease. So I believe this is the wife's side, okay? All right, so she has got all these three diseases with her, but she is not affected by these diseases at all because they are hiding inside her genes, okay? They are not exhibiting the symptoms. Very fortunately, her husband is not carrying any of these diseases, and that's why they can get pregnant very safely and without worries. Because worst come to worst, the baby would be carrying all these three diseases, but once again, the baby will not be affected throughout his or her lifetime. Okay? Right, so the point of doing the pre-pregnancy DNA screening is to do a risk assessment, okay? Is to do a risk assessment whereby, for example, let me give you an example. If daddy is carrying alpha thalassemia genes and mom is also carrying alpha thalassemia genes, there will be a 25% chance of this baby getting alpha thalassemia despite the parents are not showing any such symptoms. There will be a 50% chance where the child will be carrying the alpha thalassemia gene just like their parents, and there will be only 25% chance this baby would escape completely without any alpha thalassemia genes. So as you can see, we need to do some analysis over here, and that is that is my job as a geneticist. So after I do the analysis for you, I will be telling you whether or not you should get pregnant naturally. If let's say one of you is carrying the genetic disease and the other is not, then no problem. Go ahead and enjoy the fertility journey by doing natural pregnancy. But if let's say both of you are carrying the same genetic diseases, or sometimes not even just 1, 2, 3, okay, then I would suggest you to do something called the IVF pre-pregnancy genetic diagnosis or the IVF pre-pregnancy genetic screening. I'll go into that in a little while. And anyway, so what's the qualification needed for one medical professional to talk to you about all these kind of genetic diseases? And you might have a question, Adam, I haven't seen this kind of genetic test elsewhere. Okay, let me answer your question. I was qualified as an instructor of surgery by the Royal College of Surgeons of England. All right, so I was initially qualified this way. But is that enough to talk to you about genetics? No, absolutely not. Because when you want to talk about genes, you have to get certified, okay, as a geneticist. All Alright, so I got my certification from Stanford Medical School as a geneticist, but even still, even if you are qualified as a geneticist, you can't simply offer people, to do genetic tests. No way. You have to get specialized training. And for that, I obtained it from Harvard Medical School. On top of my geneticist certification, I have received a certification for doing genetic testing and as well as the relevant sequencing technology. Okay, so as you might recall, just now I showed you a very complicated picture about next generation sequencing. And so what will that produce? What kind of information will that produce? Data, genetic data. Hundreds and thousands, millions gigabytes of genetic information. So what are we going to do about all those data? So there will be a genetic data scientist that has to sort these data out using very advanced computer programs. And that person is called the next generation sequencing data scientist. For me, I am certified this way by the Johns Hopkins University. So in order to help you get pregnant with a healthy child without inherited genetic diseases, what we would need is a base medical qualification. Of course, you can be a doctor, all right? You need to get certified as a geneticist after you've got your base certification as a medical professional. Secondly, you will need to get certified for doing genetic tests and offering that to other people. Make sure you can explain what this test is all about, and what's the outcome and what's the solution, because these are clinical genetic tests. They are not here for jokes, all right? And then after you've obtained the test reports, you need to understand how data are generated, and if necessary, you need to sort the data out yourself in order to produce a useful report. All right, so that is the answer to why in the market there isn't many professionals doing genetic testing and offering this kind of service, even including the USA. Okay. All right, so just now we've touched on a little bit about non-clinical genetic tests, because I've spoke to you about clinical genetic tests. In the market, all right, there are companies like 23andMe, Circle DNA that are offering commercial DNA tests. So these, how do they work? Okay, so if you order a test from them, they will send you a kit via courier, and all you need to do is to open the package, follow the instructions, swab your saliva, put the saliva back into, or the swab stick into the test tube, send it back to the HQ, and they will do some testing. Right, so for these genetic tests, they are wonderful for well-being, all right? So if, let's say, you wake up very tired in the morning despite sleeping 8 hours, you've been trying all sorts of recipes, but you just can't thin down, then you should get yourself one of these genetic tests. However, they will be limited to this extent, all right? For our pre-preg, we need to rely on this report in order to tell you the next best solution, all right? Whether, for example, whether to get pregnant naturally or you have to do IVF, and that you have to go through pre-implantation genetic screening or diagnosis. They all have to be clinical and they have to draw blood, all right? So that's the main difference. Okay, so step one was to get yourself genetically tested. Secondly, all right, after the genetic test, whether or not you should get pregnant naturally or you have to go for IVF, the next step is to enhance the quality of the sperm and the egg cells, because they are very important for a healthy baby in general, all right? And with that, okay, for our supplements, for our fertility supplements, we have won the Reader's Choice Award 2021, and this award was given by Baby Talk, Mama Papa Magazine. So our supplemental products include female VHC formula female 1 and female 2. So they are pinpointing at the ovulation function and the quality of the eggs in ladies, all right? Because they are absolutely essential for producing a healthy baby. And for guys as well, we have the VHC formula male, whereby we increase the amount of sperms, increasing their quality, their swimming capability, and also their shape, not just only increasing the chance of a pregnancy, but also lowering the risk of miscarriage and a deformed baby. Oh yeah, and also our confinement, also called the after-birth care supplement, has won this Reader's Choice Award as well, okay? Now, in general, because of our modeling, okay, our medical model, we have been awarded the Super Brand Award back in 2021. So I would love to use this opportunity to thank you everybody for your kind support to us. So the third step is to proceed with pregnancy. Now, if let's say the test report shows no abnormalities, you can actually get pregnant yourself very easily. Okay, I understand that sometimes natural pregnancy might impose anxiety to some guys. Okay, we have got quite a number of these cases because you have to really get the ovulation window. Only then the chance of a successful pregnancy will be higher. So that is why we have something called the home artificial insemination (IUI). That is 1/50th price of a regular IVF, whereby you can do IUI at home. All right, without the intervention of a third party. So there are three components. First of all is to do the Verdure fertility chart. Secondly is to test for ovulation. And thirdly, which is to use the kit and inject the sperm into the uterus directly. So let me go through the steps in a bit detail. So for ladies, okay, every menstrual cycle, there will be ups and bumps in terms of the body temperature when you are ovulating. And that is why we have to check this basal body temperature chart, whereby sometimes during, okay, somewhere in the middle of the month, all right, okay, there will be a bump in the body temperature because something called the luteinizing hormone has been produced in order to stimulate the egg growth for ovulation. All right? So in that case, when you spot that there is a temperature bump, when you check that for 1 or 2 months, you will get the hang and you will get the pattern of ovulation. So on the next month, when about this time again, you can use something called the SureStep LH ovulation test kit to confirm ovulation. Right? If the test kit, okay, it is very similar to testing for COVID-19 anyway. So if it shows up positive, then congratulations, you're ovulating. So if you are ovulating on those days, for example, the third step is to use the IUI kit that we will include in the package to collect the sperm cells and also to inject that into the uterus directly. Let me show you how that's done. Okay, so the kit requires just a very minimal assembly, all right? It includes the hose, all right? It includes a syringe, where on the day, okay, if you are tested for positive ovulation using the SureStep kit, all right? Okay, so you can ask your partner to produce a sperm sample, put the hose into the sperm sample and draw the sperm cells into the syringe, all right? Disconnect the hose, all right, and connect that to the main component. It will be blue in color, that IUI kit, whereby this is the tool to actually transport the sperm cells directly into the uterus. So it is an extension, okay? So just put the hose back into this blue component and then find a comfortable position and you can inject the sperm cells into the uterus directly. So this is, in short, this is a shortcut for sperm cells to swim into the uterus, okay? Right? So it is very suitable for guys with low sperm counts, poor motility, meaning swimming capability, or having a lot of abnormal shaped sperms. And for ladies with high amounts of antibodies, often that will kill off sperm cells, right? And for ladies that are suffering from recurrent genital infection, that will again produce a lot of antibodies. And pain during the intercourse, that will also affect, the journey to natural pregnancy. And this particular kit, the home artificial insemination IUI kit, is made specially for these people. Alright, so okay, what happens if you do have a mutation? For example, if both of you have alpha thalassemia gene, then what's next? Okay, in that case, we have to do the embryo genetic selection, or the proper name is PGS-PGD. Okay, so for PGS-PGD, it is done after the embryo has been made. Okay, so during an IVF cycle, you see the doctor, you take the medication home to inject yourself with to stimulate egg growth, and on a suitable day, you go back to the hospital and doctors will extract the eggs from you. On the same day, your partner will need to produce a sperm sample. So when that is done, behind the lab, they would be fusing the sperm and the egg cells together. That will form a blastocyst. Blastocyst is almost the earliest form of a baby. And after 5 to 6 days being in an artificial womb called the incubator, where it will become something called the embryo. Alright, so the embryo, alright, at this stage there are two choices. Either to put it back into the womb directly, or freeze it up, okay, to put it back later on, or, okay, there's another variation with the freezing option, where you would be going through pre-implantation genetic diagnosis or screening, okay? Alright, if in the event that both of you are having the same kind of genetic mutation, you would have to do the PGS-PGD. Now, PGS and the PGD are two completely different things. PGS is the screen for the chromosome in the embryo. PGD is the screen for specific diseases such as thalassemia in the embryo. So it is better off to have a target. So for example, if both of you are having alpha thalassemia gene, then on my side, what I'll do is that I will inform the embryologist and let them know that, okay, there is alpha thalassemia gene, at least there's a possibility of that occurring in the embryo, so that they should pay special attention to this particular disease. Okay, so more importantly, it is that, okay, why not just straight away go through PGS-PGD? Okay, the process and the nature itself might hurt the embryo because the embryo is this small and the needle is really quite big compared to the size of the embryo, where they need to take a part of the cells for testing. And that is why we need you to have strong sperms and egg cells so that hopefully it will produce a strong embryo to withstand and get through this particular process if necessary. And of course, second problem is money, because one of these PGS-PGD cycles might cost you an extra 35 to 55,000. You can simply go to Google and search cost of PGS-PGD in Malaysia, and that's what it will tell you. So this particular test, the pre-pregnancy DNA screening, is to help you save money, okay? And it will tell you whether or not PGS-PGD is really necessary for you. Okay, and so at Verdure Healthcare, we have got a number of partners working with us. Genomics Lab and DNA Lab are both genetic testing labs where we send our tests to. BP and Path Lab, I think they need no introduction. Alpha Fertility, TMC Fertility, Sunway, Thompson, all of these are some of the most well-known fertility centers in Malaysia. Sonovision is our partner to do ultrasound scanning. Gribbles, just like BP and Path Lab, they run blood tests and hormone tests. Alright, so we are coming to the end of this session, but what I want you to really remember is that because there is really no complete cure for genetic diseases, your genes will determine your baby's lifetime health. So before get pregnant, please please give us a call so that we can help you to arrange a pre-pregnancy DNA test for you. Whether or not you have a family line of genetic diseases, do come to us because, like Chicago University has said, healthy humans like me and you, we could have get at least one or two mutated genes that can cause really a problem. Alright, so this is our contact number. We are really looking forward to help you get a healthy baby free of genetic diseases. Until then, I'll see you next time, and this video will be put on YouTube channel. So if you do have time, please go through this video once again. Kindly like and subscribe to our channel and share this video to friends and family members who are planning to have a baby. Thank you very much.